Kia ora, good evening. At 3 a.m. this morning, emergency services responded to a serious vehicle crash on Lime Hills Browns Road in Otapiri's central Southland. It appears a Toyota Land Cruiser crossed the centre lane and impacted with a concrete power pole before coming to rest in a ditch. The 24-year-old male driver was found deceased in the vehicle when emergency services arrived at the scene. Further inquiries are being completed by Winton Police, and the investigation is continuing regarding the cause of the fatal crash, including whether speed and alcohol were involved. The 26th annual Hokanui Fashion Design Awards show got underway in Gore on Saturday night to a full house. The key event on the national fashion calendar was a sellout and drew entrants from all over New Zealand. Organisers say the fashion and design was the best yet, and the finalist designs were judged by some of the best in the fashion industry. A huge team of volunteers spent many hours preparing behind the scenes, with models, makeup artists and hairstylists pulling together high fashion looks for the runway. The awards are held over 2 consecutive evenings due to growing national exposure and demand for tickets. There were around 300 garments accepted as entries in the prestigious event that had several sections. In the open section, there was streetwear. Nightlife. Wool. Steampunk. Men's. Collections. And recycled. Children were getting in on the act too, with primary and secondary school students entering garments in the streetwear, nightlife and recycled sections. Big prizes were up for grabs, with the Award of Excellence winner Simone Montgomery of Dunedin receiving a $20,000 prize package, also winner of the Steampunk Award. Margot Southland, South Today News. Whānau came together on Saturday at Manahuka Marae in Invercargill to celebrate the launch of the organisation, the South Island Whānau Ora Commissioning Agency. The agency is charged with giving out more than $20 million to whānau ora providers to help families in the South Island. And the organisation simultaneously launched 6 events in the South Island on Saturday. Free kai plus free kids activities, as well as cultural entertainment from Kapahaka, Samoan and Cook Island dance groups were all part of the launch. And later in the day, the marae hosted the Matariki Māori Design Show and Awards. Māori culture and design hit the runway as part of the show run by the Arahi Māori Women's Welfare League. Categories included traditional, contemporary and recycled, and were split into age groups, with tamariki entering garments inspired by Māori legends. Māori influence or concept were a required theme for the contemporary garments, which could be made from anything, while the recycling items had to be made from recycled or reused materials. The winning garments are on display at the Invercargill City Library later this week. It was a weekend of the miniature at the Invercargill Workingmen's Club as the International Plastic Modeller Society Invercargill branch held their 2014 Expo.
The theme for this year's edition of the biennial IPMS Southland show was Frostbite and the Savage Climate. IPMS Southland President Lester Kidd says the finished kits were overall of a higher quality from the top of the competition to the bottom as club members competed for the accolades. There were two categories, Hobby and Masterclass. 3 teams of 3 judges selected 8 Masterclass category winners. Mr. Kidd says the local competition and the judges' feedback provide great preparation for the national IPMS competition coming up this October in Christchurch.
It's been 2 years since the first fruit trees were planted in South Invercargill areas, such as part of the South Alive Rejuvenation Project. On Saturday, tree pruning experts from local nursery Dayaks were on hand at Macquarie Street Park to provide professional guidance at a free tree maintenance workshop. There are now 71 fruit and nut trees in 11 parks and 2 schools around South City, including green plums, apples, pears, peaches, green gage and hazelnuts. They've been planted with the primary aim to provide free food and are expected to produce edible fruit in another 2 years. There was also a free barbecue and a treasure hunt for kids at the family event. Stay with us, still to come. After 18 years of the last 21 as an MP, Eric Roy reflects on his parliamentary career. Welcome back. It's going to be a week of mixed emotions for MP for Invercargill, Eric Roy, as he begins his final parliamentary week. Mr. Roy retires as the MP for Invercargill at midnight on election night, but this week marks his last in Parliament. Over the coming days, we'll be profiling that career in a series of interviews. Tonight, Eric Roy's entry into Parliament in 1993 as the representative for Awarua as part of the last first-past-the-post Parliament.
And so we get to Parliament and we're hung. And then on specials, Alec Neil won Oamaru, which brought us, that made us equal. Then we appointed Peter Tapsell from Labour as Speaker, because at that stage...
Very controversial at the time.
No, it was, but he was probably the best Speaker in my time, I think. He was, and because of his coming from the other side, he actually had a lot of experience and he was wise, and I think he was probably one of the best speakers we've had in my time in Parliament.
So we move on, and of course you mentioned the impact of what was certainly the Finance Minister Ruth Richardson at the time had done, but you had regained power. What was that transition between first past the post and MMP like, that 93 to 96 government?
Yeah, well, I was a whip in that period. I'm going to talk about some of this stuff in my valedictory on Wednesday afternoon. But then, of course, with the advent of MMP coming, the backbench out of the National Party caucus split into 3 other parties were formed. United Future took some, Rock right of centre behind Ross Morant, and Conservatives was Trevor... can't remember his name.
Escapes me too. Well, that's right. How long did they last?
Yeah. And so I was left as a whip with a backbench of 13 people to run select committees. So that was pretty challenging. And then we had the election, and then of course New Zealand First had emerged as a force at that time, and it took... He won, Winston under New Zealand First won all the Maori seats and a few others, and under MMP I think it was 13 of them, and of course then they were Kingmaker, and that took about 7 weeks, which was an interesting period. And then through that time, of course that arrangement fell apart with the Bolger government. No, it was with the Shipley government, wasn't it, at that time? And then we had the interest of Alamein Kopu, who fell out to give us support, and managing Alamein and all of that. That was the most unstable period of politics in my time. You know, we didn't lose many votes in select committees. I think we lost 5 in the House. Everybody thinks the world will come to an end when that happens. Can't even remember what those bills were now, but I think we were in a new phase of Parliament which was more consensual and more difficult to actually manage majorities and to get some things over the line. And
also for yourself, with all those reforms of electorates that came along under the MMP, the redrawing of the boundaries, if you like, your seat effectively ceased to be. Yeah, Awarua was chopped up, and the sort of blue part went into Bill, and the red part, South Invercargill Bluff, went into Invercargill. And at that time I was told, you know, you won't unwinnable seat, yeah. But you returned as a list MP after 96 into that MMP. Well, I was appointed a list MP, and list MPs have responsibilities. So I was given the responsibilities of every seat in the bottom half of the South Island that didn't have an elected national member. So I was working in Invercargill, Dunedin South, Dunedin North, and Timaru, and I said to my party masters, I'm going to change my name by deed poll. I said, oh yeah, what are you going to call yourself? I said, Marmite. Why so? Well, you've got me spread so thinly. And so that was an interesting period, just cruising around, you know, flag bearing for national right across the bottom half of the South Island. Huge mileage and time, but I guess my goal at that time was to maintain the party structure and keep that stuff sort of going, and in a way that allowed us to win Timaru and do some other things as well. Let's talk about that period. We mentioned before how a lot of MPs who knew they weren't going to get on the list and their constituent seats were disappearing. It came from both sides of the House. They all formed those little parties that we mentioned before. Were you secure in the fact that you would get a good place on the list? Were you assured of anything? Well, and I can't remember that, but a number of them, certainly, because one that came out was the Christian Democrats and some people in New Zealand First and Rock, all approached me and said, oh, as a new MP, you haven't got a chance. And I think the Southland Times interview, what are you going to do? And I said, well, I'm between a rock and a hard place, which was kind of a bit of a pun. Yeah. But one of the things is you've got some principles and you actually stand on what you think they're worth and you put yourself up, and if people think you've got some value, I think I came in at 17 or 19 on the list in that first one after one term. So my decision was correct to hold the line, and obviously I was considered I had done a reasonable job as a select committee chair and a whip in that period when things were quite difficult. So I was secure on the list, but not so in 2002.
And we'll have more thoughts from retiring MP for Invercargill, Eric Roy, in tomorrow's bulletin. Stay with us. The weather is next, followed by sport, and we'll have the highlights from the Girls Brace Shield final at the weekend. From the news team, good night.